So we come to the last, what do we call these things? Speeches, whatever. Keynotes. That's right. Thank you. How many of you know about IPMA? The International Project Management Association. Bit of history. They were formed the same year as PMI. They were formed in Europe. PMI was formed in the United States. 1966. Did I get that right? It was 69. Late 60s, how's that? And both at the same time. One focused in Europe, one focused in the United States. And over the years, they developed in those countries and then began to spread out. So we have made it a point here to invite the professional organizations relative to the industry, project management. And the two biggies are PMI and IPMA. So we are academic institution, state university, so we don't have a bias in any one direction. So we want to present to you information that you can use in the profession. So they've been here for 11 times now. Now this one hasn't been here at all. She's a Dr. Meg Infiorati. Did I get that right, Meg? She's the vice president of IPMA. She's an organizational psychologist, so I'm very careful about how I look around her. She's had 30 years or so of managing projects, programs, et cetera, and et cetera. Strong focus on the human side, which is, one of the shortcomings of projects used to be didn't pay much attention to the human side, but get the activities done on time and to scope and under the budget. And I don't care how you do it, but that obviously has changed over the years. She is an IPMA assessor, international awards program that they have. She volunteers for many nonprofits. And not last but not least, I guess, she's a professor at St. Leo University in Florida. So welcome, Meg Infiorati. Meg Infiorati. I got it, didn't I? Okay. Meg, welcome here. Nice to have you. And you want this. And you want this.
So first of all, thank you very much for having me. I am filling in for a friend of mine, people you might know, Joel Carboni. I'm actually on my vacation. I left Florida 4 days ago now, and we drove in our RV, and we had actually planned to head north to South Dakota, but we took a little detour, decided to come through Texas, and we'll head up to Yellowstone the other way. So my husband is off in Kerrville collecting bamboo shoots for me for a project I have at home going on with one of the volunteer organizations I work with. And I'm here to not necessarily talk to you about IPMA, although I'd be happy to answer any questions. But as a psychologist focusing on the human side, my goal is to really talk about you. You are the doers. You are the people that make the wheels turn, that make the world go round in whatever organization you're in. So that's what I'm more or less here to talk about. If you see me standing a little oddly or fidgeting, I had foot surgery 8 weeks ago. So standing for 2 hours or an hour and 45 minutes is probably not going to be my forte. So if I do sit, just forgive me and pay attention to whatever I'm saying or was on the screen. I wanted to talk about a couple of things that I heard in David's conversation. First of all, we kept seeing the word 60% or 60+% of projects are succeeding. Okay? I'm a faculty professor. Who gives a passing grade for 60? I don't know, my students would never get a passing grade for 60. So I'm sort of looking at this as, we're really not succeeding yet. We're all failing to some extent. We might have successful pieces, but as an industry called project management or a sector of business, we're not really succeeding yet. Interestingly enough, the triple constraint that we were talking about has been around for, I'm not even going to say how many years, but a long time. Time, cost, budget, right? Or time, budget, and scope. Been around for a long time, and those three words have been, probably, tattooed on your forehead at some point. Well, when we look at what's happening in the world today, the people who are living and making those projects every day, I'm sad to say I'm one of them, are probably baby boomers and what they call Gen Xers. But who are your workers today? They're Gen Y, they're millennials, and they're the new Gen Zs. These are the kids who literally don't even need this because it's literally stuck in their brain. Mr. Wizard, which is what your smartphones are, is how they grew up. Email is a foreign concept to a Gen Z person. Email is like, what? What? Because they don't understand the concept of communicating through email, right? They've all moved to the social media mechanism. And now they're moving past social media, right? Most of us are Facebook users. I'm looking around the room age-wise. They don't even use Facebook. I cannot get my nephew, who is 26 in the Army, to answer me on Facebook. Just post one picture of you doing something in the Army. He's like, Auntie Meg, we don't use Facebook. Get on Snapchat or get on Instagram or get on this or that. And I'm like, okay, I only have so much room on my smartphone for stuff I'm never going to use but for the one picture. So I would just like to say that as you move forward, again, keeping the people in mind, recognize that your workforce is not you. These are your children. And perhaps if you've been in it as long as, I feel like I'm ancient because my first project management role wasn't even called project management. I was a product manager who happened to also be the lucky winner of managing the project and all of the people on it. That's a long time ago. I'll talk about that in a minute. But these people are grandchildren of some of us. So when we talk about how do we move forward, we might want to consider going and learning about how these generations actually operate. How do they think? How do they communicate? Because it is nothing like what you and I are doing now. They would no sooner come and sit in a room and listen to somebody for 45 minutes or an hour and a half. They're past that. I want the bullet points, and if I want to see more, I'm going to click on the see more. When they see more, they might want to see more. So you have to build on these little blips and pockets. That's how they live. So when you hand them, as we talked about, somebody mentioned the Gantt chart. The gentleman in the white shirt mentioned the Gantt chart. I immediately flashed back to my 1984 wall in my office, which had the Gantt chart. Covered 2 whole walls of my office because I had overlapping projects for my products. And I used to laugh because people would say, how do you know where you're at? I'm like, I know I'm in my office. And I'm somewhere about there. Sorta. Because that's how we lived. Obviously we've better tools, we've improved some of that. But they would no sooner walk in that office and look at that Gantt chart than I would today. So with that in mind, just keep an eye out to who are your workers, who are the guys that are supposed to do the work. You gotta go figure out how they communicate. As a psychologist, when I'm called into a business, I'm called in because the communications problem has erupted. Today we're going to talk about disruption, but the communication process has erupted. An eruption is an event. We'll talk about that in a minute. So when I get called in, I sort of look around and say, well, your products aren't bad. Yeah, you're about on time. Do you really care about your money? What's your feeling about money? And it always turns into a communications issue. And so I have to reteach people how to communicate with each other. Strange, but that seems to be the non-project management piece that we're missing. So I'm going to try to add that as an issue to your training programs. Today we're going to talk about disruption and disruptive leaderships. So the first thing I want to take a look at is this first one, disruptive leadership in a global economy. That's the title of this symposium, if I recall, right? Did I miss that? Yes, I missed it. What is it? Is that the right one? Okay. Disruptive leadership. Just a term. That would indicate that there's a person, a leader, who is disruptive. Is that what you think this seminar was about to talk about? No. Disruption or disruptive. How to be a leader in a global economy with disruptive environments. Is that what you thought you were talking about? Yeah, and so words matter. It's really important that we understand and come to an agreement and understand what are we going to talk about. So the 3 dots here actually matter. Disruptive leadership in a global economy, disruptive leadership in a global economy. But I'm going to ask you a question. Somebody added the words in a global economy to this. Does it matter? If you're talking about the disruption that's going on in Barcelona, Spain, in the last 24 hours, pretty bad, right? Do y'all agree? Over, what have we got? Over 15 killed and over 100 injured, right? That's a pretty bad disruption for that city. The 8-year-old paper boy who still throws the paper on your porch, if you happen to live in a small town, who doesn't get the papers delivered on time. Is that a disruption? Yeah, you don't get your paper. That would be a disruption for me if I don't have my paper in the morning, right? So when we talk about a global economy, we're just talking about magnitudes of scale. That's really it. But disruption, whether it's the one person who doesn't get their paper because the company couldn't deliver the papers to the paper boy, or something as horrific as what's going on in Barcelona, or what happened in Charlottesville the other day, or Durham, North Carolina, or Boston. I mean, these things are happening all the time now. These disruptions all have the same types of effects. So when we talk about disruption, we talk about, wow, that becomes quite a big word for us. We don't like disruption. People don't typically like change. If you love change, raise your hand. Yeah, there's a very small proportion of us love change. I love it. It's one of the things that I live for. What's new? I'm like a sponge. Give me more, give me more. I don't care if it doesn't fit, just give me more. But most people aren't really fans of change. Whether the change is an intentional change or it's an accidental change. Next question, does that matter? If the disruption is intentional or accidental, does that matter? No, because let's face it, the world changed. Something changed on you. So we may look at them differently, we may have different emotional reactions to them, but in general, whether it's an intentional or an accidental disruption, we don't care. We still have something to deal with. So the question for you is, are you ready? Are you ready? What makes you ready? Who thinks they're ready to handle disruption? Oh God, even less hands than the change. This is quite scary, would you agree? Because there isn't a single aspect of your life where change doesn't happen. We're in project management, right? So I have a philosophy. Project management became a field of study after I was in it. To me, it's a function of life. It is a life skill. How many people got up this morning, I'm not going to ask if you showered, but put on some clothes and arrived here for breakfast, or at least arrived here for a speech? Every hand should be in the room because you're here, right? At some point, you last night said, well, what time do I have to get up? Well, okay, I'm going to work backwards. It takes me 30 minutes to shower, 15 minutes to dress. Okay, I need my coffee. That's 10 minutes before I leave the building. Okay, I got to set my alarm for 6:40, right? You all did some kind of planning in order to make sure you arrived here at whatever time you chose to arrive here. It's a life skill, planning. What were the risks? My alarm might not go off, so what do? You set it on your phone and the one in the hotel room, just in case, right? Okay, so maybe add a little bit of risk management. Who are your stakeholders? my wife or my husband, if I don't call them in the morning, they're going to think I died in my sleep. So I got to call them because I'm 1,000 miles away or 100 miles away. Maybe that's part of your planning, your stakeholders. We do this every day naturally. It's just part of who you are. People who don't have project management in their lives are quite dysfunctional. Now, as a psychologist, I get to use those words and say that because I do meet quite a few of them. But in general, they're not going to be the people that are working in your organization unless they're in the wrong job. At which point, are they dysfunctional? In the wrong job? No. Yes, for that job. No, perhaps for your organization. But has anyone ever been in a job and they're like, what the heck am I doing here? Who's had that? Right? And you're going, where is the fastest exit? Right? We're not necessarily not productive, but we are, in a sense, dysfunctional. We're not at our best. We're not happiest. We're not the most productive. We may be missing key risk items that somebody else is going to have to fix later on down the line because we just didn't think about it. Right? So being in the right job, again, I'm all about the people, really important. Can you be in the wrong job but become the right person? Sure, if you're a sponge and you want to learn more, look for those people because they become your best assets. They're the broadest assets that you can have. So in order to navigate those choppy waters, you yourselves want to become that broadest person possible. And you want to think about how broad are you today? So I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. Okay? And as I do this, I want you to go back to your first job and just jot down on a piece of paper the answer to the question. As I run through mine, you answer your question for yours. So my first job, well, I usually don't introduce myself, but I was asked to do that here, so I don't know how to move notes down. Okay. It's a big one. Okay, so it's not working. Again, technology is one of those things that I have a love-hate relationship with. So I'm going to use my paper. I know, talk about old school. Plan B. Risk management. Okay, so when I was 8 years old, I actually was a paper girl. That's what I did for my first job where I made some money, just a little bit of pocket change. The way to determine whether or not you're ready to navigate those choppy waters of disruption that's coming is to say, what is it that I learned from that job? What did I take away that I continue to use? So for me, it was 3 things. I learned how to build a business. Hey, the more papers I sold, the more money I make. I'm no idiot. Okay? Volume was good. I learned how to manage orders. There came a point, strangely, or maybe not so strangely, when all of a sudden, my neighbor, Scott Willie, little kid, 6-year-old, I had him delivering the local papers in the neighborhood so I could go further out. Managing orders, right? I could only do so much by myself. Well, that means it's time to hire somebody, bring somebody in. Did I pay him the full amount for the paper? Absolutely not. I kept a couple of pennies for myself and he got the rest. He loved it though. 6 years old, he's making $1.20 a week. He was going to town. Mind you, I'm ancient, so that was quite a while ago. But I also learned a lot about receivables. What's the worst part about being a paper girl at 8 years old? Nobody pays you their monthly fee. You got, can I have my $2.40 for your paper, please? You have to do that. So I learned about managing receivables at 8 years old. Order management, receivables, building a business. How many people feel at 8 years old you learned that, or in your first job, whenever that was, that's what you came away with? Anybody? Can you relate to that? Sure. Did you bring that forward in your life is the real question. Did you bring those lessons forward? Okay, so let's go on to the next one. I became a professional squash washer at the age of 13. Squash washer. Every day I worked on a farm. They brought 50 baskets, big baskets of squash in. They had to go to market to be sold wholesale. Squash had to be perfectly beautiful, no little buds, no dirt, in order for it to get the highest price, right? So I was a squash washer. What did I learn as a squash washer? Work may not always be fun, but done right has rewards. The reward for me was I was promoted to cash register sales clerk. I got to sell the corn and take the money. I didn't have to do the squash washing anymore. No more dishpan hands every day. So work done right has rewards. Pretty important lesson to bring forward. And I use that today. I use it actually with my clients today. Next, I, like everybody else who turned 16, or almost everybody, I went to work for the fast food restaurant. Woo! What do you learn in fast food? Customer service. I ordered my burger with no onions. Okay, I will get you a new burger. Is the customer always right? No, the customer was wrong. They didn't order it with no onions. But you're going to go get another one and give them one with no onions. The customer is not always right. However, the customer's desire is what you're required to deliver. That's all. So, I learned customer service. And service with a smile. Don't worry about that. I'll get you a new hamburger with no onions. I happen to work at Burger Chef where you could make your own, so why anybody was ordering one with stuff on it was beyond me anyway. Go make your own, but sometimes we got those orders. So, again, customer service and service with a smile. Bring it forward. I hated that term, customer's always right. I've hated it my whole career because the customer was not always right. Have you ever heard a customer tell you exactly what they want and a day later, where'd you get that? I didn't say that. I never heard of that. I needed to do this. Your job? You know what? I think that's a good idea. Let's make it do that. That's all you have to do for customer service and people will love you. Moving on, I became a paralegal. Now a paralegal, now I'm out of high school and I've gone through paralegal school. I became paralegal. What did I learn as a paralegal? The law. I love the law. I wanted to be a lawyer. I love arguing a case. Nobody gets on Facebook with me and argues because they usually lose. Mr. Wizard is my smartphone. I call him Mr. Wizard, is the best toy ever made. I learn every day, all day. I'm sitting at that table. Sorry, David. And I was actually looking up a couple of things because there were things you were talking about. And it's like, what about this or that? So I'm literally learning on Mr. Wizard. So before I answer in anything in a Facebook discussion of note, not, I love the puppy dog, whatever, but a real conversation, I have all my facts. And because I'm a teacher, I also put in the reference. When you look at my Facebook, you'll say, here's the link to go to find the information I just said, because I don't need you arguing back that it's not true. So, needless to say, I learned the law, but most importantly, I learned how to use the law not only to my advantage, but to my and my partner's advantage. I eventually negotiated contracts. Whole key to contract management is not this. How many people negotiate contracts? Okay? How many people love to negotiate contracts? How many people are really successful at negotiating contracts? Okay, the numbers are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. The whole key to, I worked for Motorola. I think somebody mentioned Motorola. I got my PMI master's at Motorola. Okay, but one of the things I did was negotiate partnership contracts, international partnership contracts. We had an 82-page vanilla 9-font contract. My contract team said to me when I took that job, guess what? We do not make changes. Oh, great Motorola. I bow to you. I will never make a change. I had to learn every word in the contract, what it meant, and I built a risk management plan for every word or phrase so that whenever any partner said to me, well, yeah, but we don't need that. We don't do that. We don't participate in that, or that's not going to work for us. I had an answer. I had a customer service-oriented answer. Service with a smile, make them happy. My favorite one was free on board. Anyone know what free on board is? Okay, so since only a couple people, we sold software and hardware, and when a piece of hardware got off the dock from the manufacturer and onto the truck it was going to be shipped on, from that point forward, the transfer of liability changed. Okay? So when it came to software where there was no hardware involved, free on board was a whole section that had zero value because I'm not shipping anything. It was called, not at the time Mr. Wizard, but sending it over the electronic waves, software, documentation, right? There was no thing to mail. We didn't even mail a disc anymore. So they would say, take it out. I had two options. Try to take it out and argue with the almighty Motorola masters, or find a way to explain to them why free on board didn't matter. My choice, because I don't mind conflict, it's fine, but if I can avoid it, I will. I found an answer that satisfied people when I said, well, take out free on board. And I said, why? Are you ever going to ship something to me? Well, no. I said, then do you care? Do you want to hold up our partnership, future sales, revenue, for something that will never happen? Never took out a free on board paragraph. Never had to have that argument. Because you think about the totality of what the actual disruption will mean. Not just free on board doesn't work, but free on board doesn't work and it has a ramification that has nothing to do with free on board. It's future revenue for us because our sales reps are all waiting for this partnership to be completed so they can both go sell, make money. Sales reps are all about money, so you don't want to interrupt them. In any event, moving along, the law really became something that if you are not a contract person, you really should still go read your company's contract. Find out what it says. Because every time you run into a problem, the likelihood is it's because something was written and we didn't actually follow it. So go take a look at one and see what they say. Moving on, just kind of quickly, because we all learn this, I became a technical writer. I became a technical writer because I'm a good writer, and I've been told that, not just because I'm telling you, I've been told that. And I'm very precise. That was what I learned as a technical writer. Precision. Say what you mean. Review what you mean. Make sure that somebody also signs off on what you mean. Okay, don't have that. Yesterday you said this and today you said this because they think they never said that. Have them sign it. Send them my favorite thing is confirming emails, return receipt required. As soon as they open it up, I can at least say, you know, I sent this to you 3 days ago and I know you got it and I forward them with that. Here's the return receipt that said you had it. Covered, right? So keep in mind, technical writing, that I learned precision. And that's really one of the more important roles that has played successfully through my life. After that, I became a product manager. And I was a product manager many moons ago. There were no project managers. I had two teams. I ran a product line that had 22 products in it for the hospital software industry. 22 products. I mean, things like admissions and billing. You've all been to the hospital or something, right? Okay. Pretty common stuff. I had order entry. Even though it sounds clinical, it's actually a piece of paper, right? Order entry. I had morgue management. How fun was that? Yeah, inventory, some really interesting things. But here's the key to product management in my world. In my world, product management, you couldn't design a product with a team without thinking about the future. So my partner, who handled the clinical side, we decided to take our entire company and split it into 4 groups. Covered every single aspect, from design, programming, all the way through to the end of project closure. And we ran them in parallel so that the guys who designed it and coded it and installed it had to support the darn thing while the other team was in the process of designing and building. And then they would switch. What do you think happened to my quality? Skyrocketed. If you wrote it, you're going to support it. Guess what? I'm going to write it right the first time. So my designs were clean, code was clean, Customer service loved it because it was it was there 3 months out of the year to kind of lay back a little bit before they had to get into the next heavy-duty project. Make people responsible, but give them the authority along with the responsibility. That's a really important lesson I learned here. You can give people responsibility, but if you don't give them the authority, then disruption, which is what we're talking about, becomes not their issue to deal with. All of a sudden, we're back to the top management team that's stuck doing all of that. Responsibility and authority kind of go together. I thought I was retiring. I was like 33 at the time, and I had done my duty. It was done. I was like tired. So 6 months, I traveled with my mother all over Europe. We're having a blast. I come back, and my husband sort of looks at me and says, "Are you going to ever go back to work?" So my husband was a police chief, and I said, what can I tell him? Again, I'm risk management, thinking ahead. Clearly missed this one. This was a total miss. This is your 1%er problem. I said, what can I tell him I'm going to do? And he'll look at me and say, yeah, roll his eyes and walk away, and I get 3 more months of freedom. So I'm thinking, I said, maybe I'll go to the police academy. Now, the one thing that you all don't know about me is that there is nobody in the world, nobody, who is clumsier than I am. I'm just going to put it right out there. So the thought of me carrying a gun should give you pause. And I really thought my husband got the pause. No, he calls up Sheila, who happens to be a friend of ours, because of course he's chief, he knows everybody, I know everybody, calls up Sheila behind my back, registers me for the next class that's starting in 2 months, doesn't tell me a word. I'm tootling along for 2 months, having a blast. Sheila calls just before Christmas and said, hey, by the way, Meg, guess what? All your uniforms, you can pick them up at whatever dry cleaners are at, forget the name. And when you get here, you just sign the last papers. You don't have to come in and sign them early. I'm like, what are you talking about? Oh, Denver, he came in, he signed you up for the next class, the academy class. And I'm like, oh, crud, boy, did I get caught. So risk management doesn't always work in your favor. Because I didn't have a quick out. Instead, I went to the police academy and became a police officer for 4 long years. However, in true style, I learned something, and that was sympathy and empathy. Major, major important life lessons. If you have not worked in public service, you don't really get the, or military, I'll go that far because you typically have that. You don't normally have the level of empathy that a police officer or a fire officer or an EMS officer has. You walk into these situations and you just cannot believe your luck to be born who you are and with your brains and in your situation. Boy, I learned how lucky I was. Even though I'm standing there in Florida, 102 degrees, in a dark blue uniform, with a vest on, probably my body core temperature was 190. I could have flown into the sun and still not burned up. It was so hot. But the key is that you learn from these things. I took away from that those issues. I also learned one of the really important issues, which was boundaries. We all work together. And we're stuck in a room or in a building or in a set of cubicles, and we're all working pretty closely. One of the things that is a fairly huge problem that I get called in for is long after the case when somebody's boundaries were impinged on. Okay? By then, the boundary was the eruption. The boundary crossing was the eruption. The disruption has now floated out into 16 different departments. And they're all broken, and they're like, what are we going to do? So boundaries, really important to keep that in mind. And if you're going to cross a boundary, what do? Grab that customer service mindset, bring it forward and say, hey, I know this is your area. I'm going to be working on this. What do you think about us doing this? Ask with a smile. Customer service, bring it forward. Has nothing to do with boundaries, but it eventually becomes the answer to boundaries. Just moving quickly forward, I ended up, as I said, being a contract negotiator. At this point, I was not just negotiating contracts for my little division. I was doing contracts, big contracts. And I remember negotiating the Cisco contract. Anyone know Cisco? and y'all know Motorola. Two pretty big behemoths in the world, woolly mammoths, I call them because they're very old and had been around forever. Of course, there is no Motorola now, or very little, but at that time, both with stainless steel, solid state contracts. So the guy on the other side has gotten the same instruction from his manager. We don't make changes. So I got Motorola, we don't make changes. And I got Cisco, we don't make changes. And so the two of us, after about 3 days or 4 days of sitting in a room, we went to dinner, and I sort of said, I'm going to come clean. I got told by my manager I'm not allowed to make changes. So all of this kind of tenseness and disruption that we're seeing in this room is because I'm sort of under that umbrella. And the other guy says, oh my God, we must work for the same guy. I said, okay, we have a problem. And we did have a problem. But now that we understood the boundaries we were both living in, and we understood our limitations and our authority, but also our responsibility, I think we had that contract done in about 3 months. And everyone assumed this would be a year-long event. Because with most big organizations, it takes a long time. And these were big changes. So about 3 months we were done because we got the problem. The problem was not the companies, and it wasn't the contract. It was, how do we manipulate the terminology in an understanding subparagraph so that none of us got in trouble? And we could all live to that. Worked great. So as a contract negotiator, when I left that, I'll tell you, how to work with people. And so I understand you heard from Peter Eckert the other day. He said to find some gems where others weren't looking. Sometimes you kind of have to bare your soul to find that gem. And when you find that gem, grab it and use it. Make sure you use it. Don't put it in a ring for show. Use it. Take that and use that. You want to build this win-win environment. After that, I moved out of the country and I became the international director for IBM's health systems. I had a blast. First of all, who has traveled the world on someone else's dime? Is that like the best thing in the world? It's so much fun. Guess what else I learned? I had a CEO who decided that, I could go out and handle all of our customers around the world. Easy enough. So he said, you know what? I'm going to give you $1,000, and I want you to put $1,000, and we're going to put them into a little envelope. He said, and I know you can manage the contracts. I know you can manage the customers. I want you to learn currency manipulation. I'm like, huh? I'm in the hospital business. No, we're going to learn what money means around the world. And we ended up having a contest. I think we both made about $1,400 after all was said and done and all the currency was re-exchanged. But as you went to certain places, he taught me how to read the Financial Times, which I would never have picked up. I was not into finance. It's not my thing. I don't like it. There, I said it. I don't like it. Now I'm liking it a little more because I'm making money. So keep in mind that what you're doing is not necessarily what you're going to learn. Be open to everything you can possibly learn, which may have nothing to do with your job. So again, take that forward. It taught me that, and I think even I talked to Anna last night. Anna Guevara was talking about contextual international project management, right? And you're having all these people with different cultures. I learned all of that through my currency manipulation because I was running around the world looking at how is this culture operating in relation to me with my dollar, US dollar. How is this culture working? So learning about cultures, as Anna said, and making yourself aware that what is real for you in your culture today is not necessarily real for the place you fly to today. And you have to be willing to accept it's just different. It's just different. It is not a value statement. It's not good, it's not bad. It is just different. Are there good and bad things? Sure. Can you fix them? I don't know. Maybe you can. Point being, I lived in Nepal for 5 years and I could not fix child trafficking. Okay? Saw it every day. I know people, I know parents who literally sold their children. Horrifies me to this day that somebody could do that. But in that culture, having 6 girls and 1 boy was not going to work. That culture just didn't, it does not work that way. Unless you're an upper echelon, wealthy Nepali. Most people, it's not that way. And sadly, these girls were sold off into, I call it slavery because that's what it was, but essentially they were sold off to somebody for money, and whoever took them, I'm sure, tore up their passport, and they're living all over the world now. I can't fix that. I don't accept it emotionally, but I realize it's not something I can fix. But does that mean I can't do my portion of the job? No. So you have to be able to build, bring your boundaries forward, bring your creative thinking forward, okay? Managing your business, staying out of other businesses that you really can't get into. So just keep in mind that the world is just not going to be the same. Who's from Canada? Who's from Canada here? I saw several, right? Okay. If you're from Canada, are you a United States American? No, you're a Canadian American. Who came in from Mexico City or other areas of Mexico? Anybody? Okay. Are you a U.S. American? No, you're a Mexican American. You have an entirely unique culture. So when I went down to Pemex, do you know Pemex? When I went down to Pemex to install a computer system, I sort of chuckled because I didn't understand that culture at all. And the way that they manage healthcare, entirely different than the way we manage healthcare just across the border. And interesting enough, people would go back and forth across the border back in those days. If they were Mexican citizens working in the United States, they would go back to Pemex. They wouldn't stay in the McAllen, Texas area for healthcare. They went back to Pemex because they didn't have healthcare here. They went to their own. Simultaneously, the same thing happened backwards. So you really want to be aware, and this is now kind of getting the much bigger global perspective, you have to be aware of, and you want to be open to those differences. It's a hard thing to do, and if you can't do it, that is okay. Okay? I'm the psychologist now, I'm telling you that's okay. Don't take the job where you travel worldwide and have to try to find common ground with other cultures. If that's not your thing, just don't take that job. There's a lot of other people who will. That's okay. Finally I moved into consulting like everybody does, but for me it was giving back. I had built up all this knowledge. If you think about all your jobs, all these things you probably learned as well. But for me now it's time to give back. So I became a consultant and I helped people sell companies. These great entrepreneurs who are fabulous at creating and horrible at managing. Most of them is what I ran into. So we found a place for their products, their services, which were good, and a place that they could be managed well for the long term. So I went into consulting. But my consulting was not overly satisfying, so I went out and got my PhD in psychology, and I said, aha, now I have a great merger. Okay, now it was time for me. Everyone know Maslow? Anyone know Maslow? Everyone knows the hierarchy, right? Because everybody went to freshman psychology. So Maslow's hierarchy. I'm at the self-actualization world. What do I want to do for me? Okay, I've done for all sorts of other people. Now I want to do something for me. So becoming a psychologist was something that helped me ask, I asked the question, why in the world would you do that again? What were you thinking the first time, let alone the second and the third and the fourth time? I couldn't understand why businesses would do that. It made no sense to me. But have you seen that in your own organization? You do something and it didn't turn out so great, but you do it again. It'll be better next time. Anybody? It'll be better next time. Happens to everybody. And I know nobody wants to raise their hand because you don't want to really announce, oh my gosh, we did this, because we're all supposed to have learned from our lessons and we don't. But that was that was the whole point of why in the world would you do that again? At this point, I do consulting for some kind of strange things. I do strategy consulting. I help people plan. Most of the time, though, when I get in, I sort of just say, where's your lessons learned? Where's your risk plan? And when we pull it out, sure enough, there was the answer to your problem. You just didn't read it. You wrote a great risk plan, fantastic risk plan. You just forgot you had it. So, they don't usually need me for very long. If it is a long time, it's typically a people change process, but that's a whole different issue. Finally, as a professor, so now I'm like getting out of the business world and I'm teaching people to go into the business world, which is really scary because most of them can't write. And why can't they write? Why is it that most people who are 24 years old and come to you for a job can't write? Mr. Wizard, it told them everything. They have a whole new language. It's called this text thing. They don't use real words anymore. They use different words. I mean, it took me forever to understand LOL when it first came out. I'm like, what the heck is an LOL? LOL? What? What is that? My niece told me. Excuse me, I dropped something. Point being, they don't live, they don't talk, they don't think like us. At least like me, ancient. So now that we realize, I'm sitting in the classroom and trying to teach these kids, I'm like, oh my God, I got to find a way to get across to them, because I teach in class. So many people have gone to the online programs, but there are a whole slew of people out there who are failing miserably in online. They just don't get it. Personally, I loved it. For me, it worked great. But I'm very personally driven. I want to look at 17 things at the same time. They only want you to look at one. So just keep in mind that these people don't think like you, so you have to go learn a little bit about them. Am I done at 10:45? Okay. So the key to that is that, in a nutshell, jobs, whatever it is you've ever done, from the time you had your first one at 5, 6, 7, 8, to the time you are now, in a nutshell, these are the things that have taught you how to learn to be more, how to be the best you can be, but also now how to understand those around you and help them become the best they can be. And that's, project management, yeah, it does have to have a plan. I get it. You gotta know where you're going, right? Any road will get you there. But you really have to use people. Last time I checked, a project does not get done by magic fairies coming in the night, right? People show up in the morning or at some point during the day and they do some work and a project is done. So if the people don't show up, that's your problem. So care for your people is where I think the next wave, when we talked about how do we get beyond the 60%, it's going to be about the people. Because the stuff just happens. It's really going to be about the people. I just wanted to note that I think that Dr. Thurgood said, all things that helped me to be a good change leader are no different for me than they will be for you. You just have to go out and grab them and make sure that you bring them forward and put them into your current mindset. Okay, so that's my story. I had a couple things, a professor, and now I sort of just read for the heck of it. But the point being, all of these things make me who I am, and that's what makes me able to deal with my choppy waters. I live with a man who is and I love him to death, single-threaded thinker. Anyone old enough to know single-threaded versus multi-threaded? That's probably, now I'm really dating myself. So back in the old days of IBM, they made something called an IBM System 38. It was a single-threaded machine, did one set of tasks at a time. When that was done, the next set of tasks came. Now it did it fast, but still one at a time. Something called the AS400, codenamed Silver Lake, I know because we got the first one, came out. It was a multi-threaded processor, 4 things at a time, 4 processes at a time. When they asked us to reconfigure our product to put it on a multi-threaded system, I had a female and a male on my team. There were 3 of us. Walter, he was our director of product management. He put us in a room, and every now and then he'd open the door and throw food in, and then he'd close the door. They were afraid of what was going on in that room because we were creating this multi-threaded thought process. Poor Richard, who was on our team, would often look at Peggy and I and say, huh? But don't worry, Richard, it'll work. We kept saying that because we couldn't quite explain that when you're entering an order, at the same time you should be checking your inventory, When it's not there at the same time, you do a just-in-time inventory order to Baxter, which was our other partnership company. Okay, but don't they happen sequentially? Sort of, kinda. Because how many orders are getting entered for saline solution across the hospital in a single 2-minute event? Probably 40, 50 in a 200-bed hospital. So if I did that all single-threaded, what happens? Whoever's the 200th person needing the saline, guess what? Yeah, maybe we'll have some, maybe we won't. Live or die. Yeah, that was bad. So single-threaded really helped us to be able to do this and make sure that all of these things were happening together. Now, of course, that is a term and a technology that has also been overwhelmed, and we don't use it anymore. But when you live with a single-threaded thinker, like my husband, it's very difficult to travel cross-country to Montana from Florida. Just follow the sign on the road that says 10 West. It's a big blue sign, 10 West. Do not take the 264 exit, 10 West. And I swear that actually happened, 2 days ago. And I'm like, Denver, did I not tell you 6 times, follow 10 West? And you went 264. And now you're yelling at me because you have to turn the RV around. I'm like, wow, this is so not working out for me. Anyway, we're going to take a quick side trip now and talk about eruption versus disruption, because I think it's one of the areas that we mislabel, misrepresent. So if you haven't done what I did just earlier, do it in your spare time. We're going to zip through the rest of this because this is really just how do you identify what's where. But take some time, figure out who you are, what can you take from your history, and either create a new career. Let's face it, everybody wants a new career because we're all kind of saying, yeah, okay, I've done it. Thank you, what can I do next? Right? What else do you know? You know lots of stuff. Just bring it forward. So I'm going to talk about eruption versus disruption. Anyone know the difference? An eruption versus a disruption. Anyone know the difference? If you were an English major, one's an intransitive verb and one's transitive. No English majors? Okay. Eruption is an instance. It's an event. It's the moment something happens. Disruption is all the other stuff that happens because of the eruption. Right? And the reason I make this distinction is because we are talking about many, many disruptions in our world that all tie to one eruption. Something happened that kind of blew us all off our track on whatever we were doing. When we think about an eruption versus a disruption, we go back to the intentional versus, or the natural versus the man-made. Natural eruptions, what would those things be? I got one on the screen, right? An erupting volcano. When the thing blows, that's the eruption. What is the disruption? If you live downwind, it's a bad day. Okay? If you had a business downwind, a worse day. Right? If you're camping, oh bad, that's bad. That's a very bad day because you're not making it out. That pyroclast cloud's going to come down and suck you up, and you're literally toast. I don't usually say that, but yeah, you are literally toast. So, volcano, pretty simple eruption, right? What else do we have? Fire, flood, hurricane. How about death? Is death a disruption? I'm sorry, an eruption? Sure, because the minute of death is the event. The disruption is what happens to everything that surrounded that person's living existence. So we want to keep in mind that we're dealing with the disruptions or the outcomes. Can you plan for death? Absolutely. Of course. How many people have a will? How many people have an advance directive that says, if I cannot think, breathe, or whatever on my own, pull the plug? It's called an advance directive. Okay? How many people have actually bought their cemetery plots or their stones? How many people have determine what's going to happen with all their money and their assets. Who gets what? Okay? How many people have told those people, here's what you get? Right? You can plan for death, your own death. What happens when you live with somebody who won't plan for their death? If you're smart, you plan it for them. Right? I had a husband who didn't want to plan it. And I was like, I am not dealing with your 3 sisters. I'm telling you that right now. So in our will, we said, okay, let's do this real simple. We each have 3 siblings. Whenever the first person dies, he or me, you do not pass go until you write 3 checks, 1 for each of the siblings. The letters are already printed. This is your portion of the will. Do not call me. Sounds kind of silly, but you know what? I don't ever have to deal with those 3 crazy women. He calls them crazy too, so I'm not so. So we talk about different things that are kind of foreseeable eruptions. Are there man-made eruptions? Sure. Anybody got an example? Just shout it out.
Bombs.
Stock market crash. Interesting. I think that's an outcome, but we'll get back to that. What was the other one?
Bombs.
A bomb. Which part of the bomb is an eruption? The moment the guy decides to build a bomb, that's the eruption. Because that's what starts down a path. When they decide to build the bomb, they're going to buy materials. Other people are going to know about what's going on. Strange, perhaps odors or noise in the middle of the night will happen in an apartment. You know, lots of different things happen. The next eruption is when they take it to the place and they actually set it off. So you can have an eruption that you can deal with disruption. And here's the perfect one. What did they quit selling in the grocery stores? What can you not buy today that you need a good portion of a year, at least spring and fall? What can you not buy? Sudafed. Somebody said it over here. Sudafed. Why can't you buy Sudafed? Because they make meth out of it. So for all of us who are allergy sufferers, too bad. You know, we created a solution for a problem instead of going after the problem. Well, is that smart? Would you do that in business? No, that's called the U.S. government. So go FDA. I know my husband worked for DOJ, so I get to make fun of them. Point being, right, we create a solution that doesn't necessarily match the problem. Because is there still methamphetamine out in the world? Yeah, just found a different way to make it. But did they ever lift the Sudafed ban? No. You want to buy a tube of E6000 glue. My husband, who's 62 years old and is a tinkerer, we buy more glue. My house is put together, I think, with glue and duct tape, man's best friend. Every time we go to Walmart, he wants to buy a tube of glue. What happens? Some person who probably has not graduated college or high school in my particular county, I don't know about anybody else, I know most of these people that work at the Walmart, gets to come over and determine if my husband, who has a master's degree, Department of Justice, human rights, graves excavator. I mean, this guy has really weird and broad experiences, gets to tell him if he can buy glue. I don't know, sort of odd, but that's the world we live in. You have to sort of live within your context, remember? So when we talk about the eruptions, we have to really remember that even though an eruption occurs, the likelihood is there are other disruptions before the next event called an eruption. So here's we'll put it into the real context of life, right? So the eruption is you ship out a software update, and it does what? Not work. Well, just put it that way. I don't care what portion doesn't work. What is the next eruption? The IT person who pressed enter and it blew up their system. Okay? The disruption is 90 phone calls. The system is down. That's to the IT guy. My system is down. 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 Everybody on the computer, the system is down. Just so you know, now he has all of those disruptions, and he has a disruption for you, because now he's got to call you and say it didn't work. Right? So I want to be careful about understanding when can we get involved. What are the boundaries? One of the oldest inventions, I'll just throw this out as an example, are these two rocks, the 2.5 to 1.5 million years ago. These inventions were probably done by accident, right? By accident. Somebody needed to punch a hole in something. First stone that's on your, I can't tell my left from my right. Left, blame it on my mother for not getting me those Keds with the R and the L on them. I always blame my mother. Anyway, the one with the point. You know, somebody found a rock and said, oh, I can punch a hole in this. Right? Maybe they're making a skin jacket or something. I don't know. 2.5 million years ago. Right? The second one, for skinning an animal. Right? The key to this is that these inventions changed. The eruption was finding the stones. They had a purpose now. The disruption was that the community where these stones were now being kept, whoever had control of the stones controlled the group. Right? It was the technology of the time. Whoever had the best stone controlled the group. What does that mean? Attract the best mate. So now we've got survival of the fittest going on. Right? Who can skin faster? The guy with the stone. So it changes cultures when you have inventions like this. And when I said earlier, you need to know your millennials and your Gen Zs, this is the perfect example of that. You got to know what these new people with these new tools are bringing to your organization and modify how you move project management forward. This is an example of that from 2.5 million years ago. Today, I don't know that we've made a whole bunch of progress if we're only at 60%, but different story. Okay, so there was a movie in the United States. Anyone remember the movie Minority Report? Okay, so Minority Report, they had these 3 persons. It's hard to tell if they were male or female because that was the whole point. They were just cognitive beings. 3 persons who could predict crime. The person, the place, method, mode, those types of things. Do we have this today? If we did have this today, what would our world be like? Would we have the bomb? No, because precogs would have said, so-and-so's making a bomb and is going to blow it up here. Go arrest them before they finish making the bomb. Would we have had a Barcelona yesterday? No, because the precogs would have said, there's a guy who's going to get in a truck, drive it through a crowd, and kill 13 people and injure hundreds more. Or over 100 more. Okay? Do we live in that world? No. So we're still living in the world of eruptions and disruptions. I'm going to bring up the FBI. So here is a real world situation. So money, right? About 40 years ago, 30 years ago, we started having maybe 40 years ago, had a huge problem with counterfeiting in the United States. And why did we have that problem? Because unlike any other country, our money hadn't changed in 50 years. What changed was who the treasurer was that signed and the date and maybe where it was printed or minted. I guess they call it minted, not printed. So it was pretty easy to counterfeit. What is the eruption in counterfeiting? It's the moment that you hand the $20 bill to the cashier as legal tender. That is the actual eruption. What are some of the disruptions that could come out of that? Any idea?
Your financials will go down. The country's financials will go down.
Country's financials? Yeah, that's a lot of counterfeit, but yeah. What else?
It loses that money right away.
That's right.
When you go to the bank, you deposit it and they won't take it.
Exactly. The bank won't take us, and now we've affected the bank. Anything else? I'm going to run through a quick list. So the store owner now has $20 less in money to buy new inventory to put into his store, which affects every customer who comes into his store. I don't care if it's Twinkies or if he's buying newspaper, it doesn't matter. It's $20 he doesn't have. The bank, we got a bank answer. Bank now has to deal with what? Not only the store and the $20 and the cash register and the cashier who has to now debit the account and all of the tactical little things, but who do they call? Secret Service, right. Secret Service comes out because they handle counterfeit money. The FBI, however, is looking for the counterfeiter. They work in conjunction. They're part of that same team. The supplier. So if you were supplying Twinkies to the local mart, now the guy has $20 less, or maybe it's $500 less by the time he makes a deposit, $500 less to buy new inventory. If you're the Twinkie or distributor, guess what? Your Twinkie order just went down. Do that times, we'll go past that. Do that times all the stores that the counterfeiters are using in one 3-day period before anybody makes the deposit. All the other stores in the neighborhood are in trouble. So again, the poor distributor now is like, well, nobody's buying Twinkies. Or they're buying 1 box, not 12 boxes. Other banks. Because if it happened in one store, it happened in another. So now the other banks are all getting involved in the chase for these guys. So as I said, other store patrons, the criminals themselves, they're on the run. So for them, the effect is, I got to stay out of the places I've been in, and I now need to probably start checking, because I know they're looking for me. Do they have a camera? So there's a lot of stuff going on. The family of the criminal when they finally get caught. The families of the victims. Because what is the store owner going to do when they hand change back to you? Okay, so, I'm the counterfeiter. I don't want to point anybody else out. So I'm the counterfeiter. I go to the store, I buy my $20 worth of stuff, give them a $20 bill. You walk in with a $50 bill and you buy $10 worth of food and they give you 2 20s back. And one of them is a counterfeit bill. And you now go to the Winn-Dixie to buy the rest of your big groceries. What happens to you? They come and they arrest you for being a counterfeiter, right? I mean, it becomes this huge problem. We got lawyers and courts and other criminals and other victims. I mean, it goes on and on and on. One single $20 bill. Tiny event, huge ramification. Can you individually handle all of this? What do you think? No, you can't. Possibly, we could have avoided this, though. How could we have avoided the counterfeit problem? Sorry? Update money. That is exactly what the United States did. And guess what? In 40 years, we've done it twice. Because the first time they updated it, they put the little silver piece in it. Yeah, okay, I'm not a rocket scientist, but I could probably put a silver piece in it too. So same technology as reprinting the bills with color now, and you add the silver piece. Okay, so that didn't really work. What's another thing you could have done? And then they printed them again, this time with new faces and new colors and lots of watermarks and all sorts of crazy things are going on in your bills today. But it doesn't mean counterfeiting can't be done. Where do you want to fix the problem? As soon as the bill goes to the cashier, wouldn't it be nice if when you took the bill and you stuck it in the drawer, it automatically read counterfeit, had a picture on the camera, took a picture of the guy that just handed it to you, automatically sent a notice to the FBI or Secret Service, said, I have a counterfeit bill, notified the bank. The police will be there in minutes while you're making change. That's how you stop counterfeiting. But did we as the United States of America, I don't know about anybody else, but did we do that? No, our cash registers haven't changed since 1912. Okay, maybe they've gone digital and you don't press the button anymore, but that's close. But how simple would that have been as a solution? A scanner in the drawer. Done. Okay, so if anyone's looking for a new business opportunity, there you go. Point being, when we look at eruptions, it is never going to be the big eruption. 10 minutes? Okay. Oops, I'm using the wrong technology here. So, don't have to stand up, but a rhetorical question. So, here I'm going to ask, we're going to move on to, from an eruption, are you the person who can fix it? Okay, we've already gone through our own personal assessments. We've taken a look at what our own, I guess, tools, knowledge, whatever, that we brought forward from the time we were 5, 6, 8, whatever it was. Here's a question. Who in this room is a CEO? Anybody? Interesting. Top of the chain, they make final decisions for the organization, right? So who knows who this guy is? Anybody know who he is? I know you bought from him. This is Doug McMillon, and he is the CEO of Walmart. Okay? They're the largest organization in the USA, is Walmart. And I think they're pretty much leaning on being the largest in the world with their current expansion. Interestingly enough, Walmart had the worst quarter ever this past quarter. You know why? No, well, sort of, kind of. Amazon has decided to do what? Plop. Plop. They're going to try to do that whole drone business of delivery. Walmart says, hey, that's not a bad idea. So Walmart puts a whole bunch of money into this. Haven't really made any progress yet, but their earnings went way down because they put all of this money into this drone business. Let me ask you a question. Who lives close enough to Walmart that you would get your product in, say, 10 minutes from the Walmart? Anybody? I don't. Okay. So, is just-in-time delivery of everything you want immediately right now important? No. I don't know what Amazon and Walmart think they're doing, but most of the people in this room who live within 10 minutes and could get it immediately don't really need it. So Doug McMillon's sort of looking at his corporation saying, maybe I made the wrong choice. Who knows this guy? Anybody? He's the president or the chief managing consultant of McKinsey, and his name is Dominic Barton. And the reason I mention them is because who in this room is a consultant? As a consultant, can you decide to take a job or not? Yes. As a consultant, can you decide to exit a job when things are just they're not going to do what you're recommending they do, and you only see failure in your future? Can you exit that? Sure. You have your own future ahead of you. So when we look at these two people, McMillan's got a whole worldwide, 130,000 employees that he's got to worry about. Managing partner at McKinsey has to worry about what did one consultant do, and did they do it for the right reason? So two different approaches. Anyone know this guy? Of course not. Can't see him. He's the financial investor, silent partner, who owns a stock, any stock, a stock. You are a silent partner because you don't typically get to tell that company what to do, but you're the investor. You're the one that makes this happen. When do you get to say something? Once a year when maybe you get your voting sheet. The problem with this issue here, though, relative to eruptions and disruptions, is that these three people have very unique roles. The CEO, he has to both make the decision and live with the consequences. That's McMillan's problem this quarter. Barton, what is he, he does make the decisions, but he has distributed the accountability and the authority to make those decisions on behalf of the organization. And therefore, he's really put in place the rules for the event. The rules are what his goal is. And then people will follow the rules or not, but then that's a disruption and he'll deal with that. The silent partner, you've got none of those. I'm going to ask you a question. As a project, if you are not a project manager, You're a PMO, you're a director, something else. Stand up if you're not a project manager. Okay? Not very many. So all the rest of you people are doing. When a disruption occurs, what is your level of authority to fix the problem? I don't need you to answer. I need you to think about how do you operate in your organizations in order to deal with the disruption. Do you have the authority to make a change? To what level do you have that authority? Can you hire people when you need them because you're behind schedule? Can you get more money because, some supplier went out of business, you had to get a different supplier? You probably don't have as much authority as you need in order to move that 60% higher. Take a look at your management styles. Make sure that you're able to be all of these types of management styles. I'm not going to go through that. That's a whole different class. But understand your management style, because your management style is what will help you be successful in the disruption mode. Each one of these is used in different circumstances. Just a quick note, when we talk about the Philippines, anyone know in the Philippines they do a lot of customer service. They also are affected by earthquakes and tsunamis. So, things are going great. You moved your entire customer service over to the Philippines. Low cost, lots of immediate service. Earthquake hits, tsunami comes in, 85% of your workforce is gone. Now what? 500 phone